Have you ever driven down a lonely road late at night and felt like you weren't alone? That feeling of being watched, of something just beyond the reach of your headlights. That's how my story begins, on a stretch of old Route 66, just outside Kingman, Arizona. There was a phone booth there, rusted and forgotten, a relic from another time. I must have driven past it 1,000 times on my way home from the night shift, never giving it a second thought. I mean, who would? It was just an old glass box full of dust and graffiti, a ghost of the past. But one night, the ghost decided to call. It was 2:14 in the morning, the desert was so quiet you could hear your own heartbeat, and then, a sound that didn't belong, a sharp, metallic ring slicing through the silence. I slowed my truck. Sure, my exhausted mind was playing tricks on me. A phone booth ringing out here? Impossible. There were no power lines, no connection to the modern world. Yet, the ringing continued, steady and impatient. It felt like someone was on the other end, and their time was running out. Against every self-preservation instinct I had, I pulled over. The air was frigid, the kind of desert cold that sinks right into your bones. As I got closer, the ringing suddenly stopped. The booth was silent again. The glass was smeared with fingerprints that looked way too fresh. Inside, the receiver hung slightly off its cradle, swaying almost imperceptibly. I told myself it was just the wind, or a weird vibration from my truck, but my hands were shaking as I reached for the door. The second my fingers grazed the cold metal handle, it rang again, loud, piercing, right next to my ear. My whole body screamed at me to run, to get back in my truck and drive away. But a deeper, more dangerous curiosity had taken hold. I had to know. I opened the door, the hinges groaning in protest, and lifted the heavy black receiver to my ear. The plastic felt strangely cold. At first, all I heard was a wall of static, like an untuned radio station from a forgotten decade. Then, a voice emerged from the noise. It was a man, his voice low and strained, a desperate whisper. "Don't hang up," he said. I didn't finish the call, and just like that, before I could even process what he'd said, the line went dead. I just stood there, frozen, the dead receiver still pressed against my ear. My reflection stared back at me from the cracked glass, my face pale and looking older than it had just minutes before. I tried to rationalize it. It had to be a prank, or maybe I was just exhausted. Night shifts mess with your head, right? That's what I kept telling myself all the way home. But when I finally tried to sleep that morning, the only thing I could hear was that insistent, metallic ringing echoing in my mind. The next night I dreaded that part of the drive. As I approached the turnoff, my heart started hammering against my ribs, and right on cue, at 2:14 a.m., the distant ringing started again. This time, I didn't stop. I floored it, gripping the steering wheel, pretending I couldn't hear it, pretending it wasn't real. But as I sped past the booth, a dark shape in my rearview mirror, my cell phone buzzed in my pocket. I glanced at the screen, unknown number. My blood ran cold. I let it go to voicemail. Later, when I was home, with all the lights on, I finally got the courage to listen to the message. My stomach twisted into a knot as I heard it. It was the same strained whisper from the booth. "You drove away," he said. "Please, don't do that again." The plea in his voice was chilling. It wasn't angry. It was desperate. Broken. Sleep became a stranger. I was haunted by that voice, by that ringing. I had to know more. I started digging old town records, newspaper archives, anything I could find about that specific stretch of road. That's when I found it. An article from the local paper, dated 1998. It was about a fatal accident. A man named Elliot Harper's car had broken down late one night on Route 66. Witnesses said he run to the nearby phone booth to call for help. A drunk driver hit him before he could finish the call. The ambulance arrived 20 minutes later, but it was too late. Elliot was gone. The article ended with a haunting detail. He was found still holding the phone's receiver. I tried to avoid that road completely after that, taking long, inconvenient detours home. But it didn't matter. The calls followed me. Every single night, at exactly 2:14 a.m., my own phone would ring, an unknown number. Sometimes when I'd foolishly answer, there was just silence on the other end. Sometimes, I could hear faint breathing. But the worst call, the one that made me want to throw my phone into a river, was the one where I heard my own voice, panicked and cracking, begging someone, anyone, to hurry. I stopped answering the calls, but the voicemails kept coming, each one more desperate than the last. He sounded like he was fading, his words lost in static. Then, one night the message changed. The whisper was gone. The voice was calm, almost serene. "You're getting closer," it said. "You're starting to understand." That's when I looked down at my hand, and I saw them. Deep, red indentations in my skin, perfectly shaped like the grooves of an old telephone receiver. I had no memory of gripping anything that hard. I knew then I couldn't run from this anymore. I had to go back. I had to face whatever was waiting for me in that booth. I drove back out there, against all reason. The desert felt different that night. It was unnaturally still, like the entire world was holding its breath, waiting. The ringing started before I even got out of my truck. I stepped into the booth, the air thick with the smell of dust and decay. The phone was ringing off the hook. This time, I didn't hesitate. I answered it. "This is where it happens," the calm voice said through the static. "What happens?" I asked, my own voice a dry croak. "The waiting," he replied. Suddenly, the glass around me fogged up, obscuring the outside world, even though the air was freezing. Through the haze, I saw a pair of headlights in the distance. They were coming fast, way too fast. The voice on the phone grew softer, almost a gentle sigh. I just needed someone to stay on the line. The ringing stopped, and everything went black. I woke up with a jolt, slumped over in the driver's seat of my truck, parked on the shoulder of the road. Morning light was spilling over the horizon, painting the desert in soft pastels. I looked over, and there it was, the phone booth, standing quietly in the distance, looking just as rusted and forgotten as it always had. I told myself it was a nightmare, a hallucination brought on by stress and a total lack of sleep. I quit my night job that same week. I needed a change. I needed to get away from the night. About a month later, I heard the city had removed the booth. They said it was a safety hazard. Just like that, it was gone. Life started to feel normal again. The calls stopped. The strange marks on my hand faded away. The memory of that night began to feel like a dream. Last night, for the first time in a long time, I found myself driving down that same stretch of road. It was just a road, now. Where the booth once stood, there was nothing but empty asphalt and sand. But as the clock on my dashboard ticked over to 2:14 a.m., my phone lit up the dark cab. Unknown number. My heart stopped. After a long moment, I answered. The line was mostly static, but through it, I heard a faint, familiar whisper from somewhere far, far away. "Thank you for staying." Then the line went dead, and I was alone again in the silence of the desert. Thanks for listening to my story. If you enjoy tales of the strange and unexplained, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what is coming next. Stay safe out there.